Thank you for being here. And so we do have a long agenda. We do have a very exciting topic on our agenda, and I think that's why we're here today to talk about that and to have a presentation on that. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead, and I'm going to have our Superintendent, Trevor Green, kick this off for us, and that would be the strategic planning. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Director Navarro. It's with great pleasure that I stand in front of you after a long process that was initiated the 16th and 17th of September to present the first presentation of the strategic planning process in the official, almost finalized version for presentation to the board. We've had several entities involved in the preparation of this document, core planning team, alignment team, review teams, and we're grateful to all of those who were able to donate their time to make that happen. So for our presentation today, we welcome back from the Oakland, California area. Can't say the name of the city across the bay from that place right now. I'm having a problem with that after last night. But we have Mutu and Laura Hayes here to make the presentation for us of the strategic plan. Please join me in welcoming both of them.
Great, thank you. I'm good. Thank you, directors and superintendent. Good afternoon and Happy New Year to everyone. About 4 months ago, almost exactly 4 months ago, we started the strategic planning process on behalf of the district. It's been a really terrific journey, and what we'd like to share with you really is your work. Our role, we are facilitators, and what we did was to hopefully coalesce the hopes and dreams and desires of the Yakima community around a common direction for all the students in the district. I have my colleague, Laura here, who's been along with me on the journey. And we call this Strengthening Community Through Education, and that's the title of the strategic plan. It's got 3 planks that we're going to emphasize: the goals, the idea of growth for all students and for the district as a whole, and then graduation as a culminating desire we have for all of our students. So that's how you say my name. There'll be a test afterwards. And then my colleague again, Laura Hayes. I want to point your attention to the circle where we talk about what a facilitator does. Our role all along has been as a guide. And a guide does not command or control. It wouldn't work anyway. But we do direct, and we're leaving it up to you to decide. So what we're presenting this afternoon, this is not performance facts plan. This is the plan developed by several hundred folks who live in this community. It's still a work in progress, a lot of fine-tuning being done, but the big bones or the foundations of the plan are in place. The key recommendations are in place also. Now it's just tightening the language. We even talked about changing some of the graphics and so on. So what you will see this afternoon, it's like 99.9% solid in terms of the content. Okay, the presentation will be in 4 parts. A few minutes on the planning process itself. Then we'll share some highlights of the strategic plan, the key recommendations. We'll say just a few words about implementation. Lots of districts, almost every district does a strategic plan. That's the easy part. What many don't do is to actually follow through on implementing the plan. So we have some thoughts, some ideas for you around how to make sure we have what we call discipline implementation. In other words, how do we ensure that we turn our beliefs and our desires into action and results for students? And that's really the heavy lift. Beyond today, it's all about part 3. If we implement, we will make a huge difference in the lives of students. If we don't implement well, the opposite will happen. And then I'll end with a few sentiments around what each stakeholder will give or can give and what they will get in return. What would we expect students to give about teachers, leaders, etc. Okay, the planning process. We suggest that the primary purpose of planning is alignment, moving from the arrows on the left to the arrows on the right. And that's the primary purpose. It's almost like going to a chiropractor. Things might seem to be okay, but when you do go to a chiropractor, you get a chance to really get things lined up much more correctly. And if you want stakeholders to be committed to a plan, it makes sense to involve them in developing that plan. That's why the approach that we take at Performance Fact, we call it embracing diverse voices and perspectives. It will have been easier and it will have cost a lot less and taken less time for the board to have just anointed 8, 9, 10 folks and asked them to write a plan. But if they did that, even though it's an efficient way to go, you won't have the commitment of all stakeholders. The route that was taken, which I suggest is a much wiser way to go, is to actually embrace all of those stakeholders in the development of the strategic plan. And to give you a few ideas about what was involved, we had several teams. The very first team we met with were the students themselves. We had 4 focus groups, one group of elementary students, one group of middle school students, and we did 2 high school groups. And those students numbered well over 100. So they were the first group we got through, and we compiled their information and brought it back to the core planning team that processed the data. The core planning team consisted of about 70 people. All the stakeholders were in that group. There were students there, there were teachers, there were parents, community leaders, there were board members, administrators. So anyone who has an interest in quality education in the Yakima district had a representative, at least one, on the core planning team. That team made close to a 6-day commitment over 3.5 months. They started in September with a 2-day session. A few weeks later, another 2-day session, then a full-day session about a month after that. And early December was the last half day. So it was a huge investment on their part, about 5.5 days for each one of those 70 folks. There was also an instructional focus team, which was primarily instructional leaders and coaches and lead teachers in the district. We had Laura led 2 sessions with them. We had 3 community forums open to all residents of the Yakima area. The alignment team was a group of about 15, 16 folks who represented some of the key decision makers or organizations within Yakima. And we made several presentations to the board. In fact, the board took the lead on articulating the profile of the Yakima graduate, which we'll share with you in a few moments. Late last month, also, the superintendent took the draft plan and he went around and invited several additional groups to participate in the process. And some of those are listed here. For example, more than 50 folks in the faith community, about 50 people, participated in one of those review sessions. So in addition to spending several days by the core team until as recently as last week, as recently as the last week before the Christmas break, we were still vetting the recommendations with stakeholders. Okay. So what I'd like to do next is to just highlight parts of the strategic plan. And the plan was based on these 3 concentric circles. The starting point was to have all of us reach consensus around what do we want for students. So that's circle number 1. It is the centerpiece of the work. What specifically are the outcomes or desires or dreams or hopes for all students in this district? And the group came up with about 5 goals, which I will share with you later on. Once we define the goals for students in circle number 1, we go to circle number 2. And circle number 2 is about instruction. And the reason that one is higher than all the others except students is because it is where student, teacher, and content come together. That's where the magic happens. We all have a role to play, but we're suggesting that when it comes to actually teaching the students, the teacher comes first. So we elevated the instructional piece a little bit higher than circle number 3. Circle 3, it's about the support system. We call it the empowering infrastructure. What needs to be in place in order to ensure that all students succeed? They meet the goals of circle number 1. And that what needs to be in place for us to make sure we support teachers and teaching in circle number 2. And I'll highlight in a few moments some of the recommendations in each one of those 3 areas. This is a very important distinction to make, the idea of putting the students first. So all decisions are really based and should be based on what impact they can have on the goals for students as we move forward. Okay, I mentioned a few minutes ago that the board took the lead on articulating the profile of a graduate. So imagine that when a student graduates from our school district, what do we want them to know? What do we want them to be able to do? And what kind of people do we expect them to be? Would we like them to be? We call them those their dispositions. What our students need to know, what they need to be able to do, and what they need to be like. And the board identified 6 qualities or characteristics of the Yakima graduate. In no particular order. One is that they be resilient learners. The second is they be personally responsible and accountable. That's the second quality of our graduates. The third one is that they be connected locally and globally. The fourth quality is they ready for college and career. The fifth one would be to be effective communicators. And the sixth quality is that they be critical thinkers. So each one of these attributes has some specific skills associated with them. And when you get a chance to look at the full strategic plan, you will see the bullets under each one of those 6. So we want our students to be resilient learners, personally responsible and accountable. We want them to be connected to the local community and also globally. We want them to be ready for the world of work and also college as they choose. Great communicators and to be critical thinkers. The second part of what we want for our students is really framed around what we call our vision for the district, our promise, and also our core values as a school system. And I just leave that slide up, give a chance to take a look for about 30 seconds. Okay? That brings us now to the goals for students. So what exactly do we want to be, what do we want our students to achieve, to accomplish by the time they graduate? And the core planning team and all the stakeholders came up with 5 goals. Start with goal number 1. Goal number 1 is about making sure that we give them a strong foundation. So think of goal number 1 as applying to the students between the ages of 3 and 5 or 6. I'm actually going to go to goal number 5. I'll come back to the others. So goal number 5 is about making sure that they graduate ready for college and career. So think of goal number 1 and goal number 5 as being the bookends. So by the time they are age 5, we want them to be ready for success. And then goal number 5 will be to make sure that they're ready for what comes after high school. So those are the 2 bookends. Then between those 2 bookends are 3 additional goals. Goal number 2, think of that as a social-emotional learning goal. We want all students to feel empowered, connected, supported, resilient, and engaged. Goal number 3 will be about mastery of the core subject and also development of critical thinking skills. Goal number 4, it's really quite unique. We've done this work for more than 20, 25 years in more than 50 school districts across the country. And only one district that we've worked with has this as one of its goals. And it's the idea of all of our students being bilingual and biliterate. So that's the 4th goal in the strategic plan for Yakima. So 5 goals, get them ready early, goal number 1. Goal number 5, make sure they graduate, and then we have 3 goals in between. So it is these 3 goals, it's these 5 goals then that form the basis of what we must do well. The goals define what we want for students. Now we need to talk about the skills and competencies and capabilities we must develop as a school system to make sure that every student by name, without exception, can actually succeed according to those 5 goals. And in articulating what we must do well, we frame them in terms of what we call our 4 pillars. Think of what we have to do well as analogous to building a house. And if you can build a house on only 4 foundations, on what 4 foundations would you build a house? You need one foundation that addresses teaching and learning. We call that pillar number 1. You need a foundation that recognizes that schools can't do it alone. That's pillar number 2. Our third foundation, we call it investing in people. And that's making sure that our folks over time, we invest in them so they get to the top of their own craft. They're as good as educators can get anywhere. And pillar number 4, it's about making sure that we have a way of making sure all the pieces come together. We call that managing the whole. So pillar number 1, again, is teaching and learning. Pillar number 2 recognizes that schools can't do it alone. Pillar number 3 is about investing in people. And pillar number 4, it's about managing the whole. So these are the 4 foundations of all the work we need to do. Everything we need to do ought to be about making these 4 ideas come together very successfully. And for each one of those 4 pillars, there's some specific recommendations or strategies that the core planning team and instructional focus team came up with. In your handout, you have the full display. Just a few examples of professional practices and strategies that have been recommended. I'll leave this one on the screen just for a few seconds. Okay, here's some of the strategies. This one for goal number 4 specifically. So each of those goals, again, has some specific action steps. Okay. So I'm going to move on to part 3, which is the piece around implementation. As I said in my introductory remarks, now this is the easy part, the strategic planning. It's always very exciting. You know, people show up, we have a nice plan, it's all on nice colored paper and so on. But success really ultimately depends on the extent to which we follow through. Are we really going to implement this or not? And based on my experience with this district, I am absolutely confident that this is a plan that the district and its stakeholders will follow through. When we do that, there's no way we will fail. When we do that, there's no way we will not move student achievement to the next level. The opposite is also true. If we don't follow through, the implications of that are quite obvious. So we have a really nice plan, and the next step, again, is implementing. So I want to offer an approach to implementation that really it's common sense. You know, this is January 13th. It's been barely 2 years into the new year, into the new decade. Many of us have New Year's resolutions. And some of us, for me personally, I'm retreading the one I said in 2016 this year, partly because I did not follow through with discipline, right? So that's really all it takes. It just takes making a commitment and then following through. When we follow through, we're going to be okay. Our kids will be fine. When we don't follow through, again, the opposite happens. And it's a very simple framework. The very first part that says every 3 to 6 years, we've done that already. That's what the strategic plan is. So every 3 to 6 years, we should come together like this, and we should move forward as one. And in moving forward as one is a strategic plan which involves all of our stakeholders. Now, we have a 6-year plan. And a 6-year plan ought to be implemented in annual chunks. You don't take all 6 years at once. So at the start of each school year, beginning in the 2020-2021 school year, we ought to say what exactly out of our 6-year plan, what are we going to implement in 2020-2021 school year. And we take a firm stand, and we direct budgets, and we make our decisions on the basis of the annual plan. All right? But even a year is a long time to go. So you can break that into bite-sized chunks too. So what are we going to do every week? What are we going to do every month? What are we going to do roughly every quarter, every 6 to 12 weeks? What are we going to check in on mid-year and end of year? And then we'll repeat the cycle. It is that discipline of setting targets and the goals at the start of the school year and then tracking, monitoring progress all along that's going to make sure we get the results. It also gives us a chance to make mid-course corrections. Any plan that you make, excuse me, any plan represents your best bet about how to get to where you want to get to. Think about the plan for your retirement, the time for your vacation, your plan for any kind of planning. So along the way, it's okay for the plans to evolve. It will change because we will learn things along the way that will compel us to make mid-course corrections. We just want to do that intentionally, not do it because we just fell into it or because we lost track of where we're going. But it's okay for the plan to evolve. It's okay for some of the strategies to change. It's okay to adjust things. We just want to make those adjustments based on evidence, based on data, not because we took our eye off the goal. Okay. And finally, we want to just share a few things about what each stakeholder will get and what each stakeholder will give in order for this to happen. So the story really comes full circle. We started the planning process by engaging all stakeholders in articulating what the plan ought to look like. Now, when it comes to its implementation, parents just can't go home and think their work is done. Our community stakeholders can't say we've done our part. No, all of us, each of us, still have to be involved in the implementation. We play different roles. The expectations or what we would like to see parents do or our community folks do will be different from what we might expect from our teachers and principals. But everyone can add their own little piece. So the same folks that develop the plan are being called upon to ensure that they play their role in implementing the plan. We can't leave it just to the schools, and the schools can't leave it just to the board or the community either. So we have some suggestions about what each stakeholder will give, beginning with the students, the same group we started with. So some of the things that the students might give will be to just believe that they can learn, and to believe that learning takes effort. And effort is what the whole growth mindset is all about, that they have this efficacy about themselves, that they can get quite good in their craft. So that's what the students might give. What the students might get will be a learning environment conducive to high achievement for them, and some of the other attributes on that slide. Same idea for parents and families. Some of the things that they might give would be to just reinforce high expectations, make sure their student follows through on what he or she has to do to be a successful student. And some of the benefits for parents and families will be academic growth and behavioral growth for their students. And I just flip through a few of the others, give a chance to read those. So these are for community members, for teachers and staff, for administrators, for district leaders and staff, and finally for the board of directors. So in closing, I want to really commend the board and the superintendent again on the commitment. We've done this in many, many, many districts, many of them in Washington State. And we met again this afternoon with the superintendent and some of the folks on his cabinet. It's still a work in progress. I mean, we've been very impressed, Laura and I and our other team members, at how the level of detail and scrutiny that the district is taking the plan through. I also want to commend the district for the really intentional focus on making sure that the plan, when it's done, is something that our stakeholders can understand. It's been translated into Spanish. I'm sure the superintendent might call them out. Several organizations, most notably La Casa Hogar, have been really helpful in taking the academic language of the plan and translating into language that's more amenable, that what I call real people can access. So you have a great setup already. You really do in Yakima. And the goals are achievable. I think you have enough people who are well-meaning. You have very bright folks. The next step is just to implement it. It's really to implement it. So on behalf of my colleagues at Performance Fact, I want to thank you for having us be part of the exercise. We very much would like to stay in touch with you on the implementation. Once we're invited in by a school district, we assume that we're part of the family, and you cannot eject us. You can tell us when we come in and when we have to stay out, but we really fully hope that as you go on this journey, the implementation journey, some of it we can assist you with. Others, we really can't play a role, but we'd like to stay involved learn from your experiences, and also share with you some of the things we've learned from other school districts. So I want to thank you again, and Happy New Year. God bless. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mutiu, and thank you, Laura. You are part of the family. You can be our crazy aunt and uncle as you come back whenever you want. He stole a little bit of our thunder. I just wanted to make a comment here before turning the time back over to Director Navarro. I appreciate very much the partnership that we've been able to develop in this process with La Casa Hogar. Having the outreach from that community organization and the advocacy that they put forth in making sure that all members of our community, especially monolingual Spanish speakers, are involved in the process. They made it possible for us to really elevate the voice of all of our constituents and make sure that we were taking into account things that we hadn't considered as a English-speaking majority here, members of the board and cabinet. So I greatly appreciate the partnership we've developed with La Casa Hogar. In addition, Mutiu also mentioned all we have to do now is implement the process. So I now get to share with you one of my firm beliefs, and that is 27 plus years of education have taught me that implementation is exactly where initiatives go to die. So we have to really make sure that we are taking, really monitoring the process, that we are holding ourselves accountable, that we do stay true to the touch points that were demonstrated and shown here in the presentation, so that we are practicing that reciprocal accountability that we do expect from everyone in our system, and that is we now have the tools to move forward in teaching and learning. We have the tools now, the goals, the 5 goals to direct us in what the community wants and expects out of us, and in partnering with us, and that's something that's very exciting. But it's up to us now to make sure that implementation does actually occur, and that does happen through that accountability and the monitoring. So the role that we have now as a board and cabinet and as our entire team is to make sure that does happen. So I wanted to thank also the many members of our audience that did participate in the process. I look out and I know that we had not only members of the board that participated in the process, our interpreter as well was there for all of the entire sessions, but our YSD superintendent, several principals, community members, also students involved in that process. So I'm very proud of where we've come from, where we've started, and now where we're at. When I first met with La Casa Hogar, one of the things that they said to me right away is, they asked me about their involvement, and they said, well, what typically happens with strategic planning? And Mutiu actually called that out quite eloquently in the fact that many districts are able to go forward and do this in isolation and then share it with the community after the fact. And that's something that we were adamantly opposed to. And the board really stepped up in participating in that process, making sure that we had as many people involved in this process so that we have a true understanding of what our community wants and how we can serve them. So thank you for entrusting me and all of the members of the Yakima School District and Yakima community with this process. We greatly appreciate your trust in us, so thank you.
Yes, I do on behalf of the board, and I'll open it up for any comments from board members, but I do want to thank Mutiu and Laura. Thank you for your leadership, for your guidance in this process. The strategic planning process can be a very complex and arduous process, and we were fortunate to have such great facilitators to assist with the process, and you can see the final product, right? So we also want to thank our superintendent, Trevor Green, for his leadership. It takes a great leader to step up and to collaborate, to do all those things, collaborate with the community and faculty and staff and so forth. So, Mr. Green, thank you for your leadership as well. When this year, or maybe just last year, the roadmap was due for revision or updating, and the board had discussions about whether or not to continue with the same process or try a different process, right? And so the board came up with a thought that maybe we should go with a strategic planning process, and I'm glad that the board made that decision, and as the board decided that we wanted to go that route, and there was a few goals that we wanted to accomplish. One was to that this new strategic plan would reflect the beliefs, expectations, and the values of our community in terms of providing an education to Yakima School District students. And I know we've accomplished that. And we also wanted to be a collaborative process. We wanted to hear from everybody that was willing to speak and to provide any of their opinions or expertise and so forth. And as Mutu and Trevor mentioned, we had so many people, and many of you here today were included in the process. So, and we wanted to develop and re-examine and maybe develop a new direction for the district, a new superintendent, new board members, and we wanted really to look at the new direction or a direction for our school district, considering all the legislation, everything that's going on at the federal level and so forth, all the changes in our testing and so forth. And we wanted to look at direction for the district. So as you can see from our final product, we do have a clear and shared vision for students in the Yakima School District. And we do have a clear roadmap in order to accomplish, that's going to help us to accomplish, those goals. And I really like, and I think it was our community members, they came up with the promise, right? That the Yakima School District promises, let's see, add it here, promises to provide a safe, equitable, inclusive, and learning environment so that every student thrives and succeeds. Isn't that awesome that our community and all our committees develop that statement there? Just reading that statement there, it excites me in terms of the work that we're going to be engaging in here in the future. So I do want to, on behalf of the board, thank all those that were involved. Our cabinet was very involved as well. Kirsten was involved, our faculty, our staff, our community. We appreciate the support, and we appreciate the collaboration. We appreciate everything that everybody was involved in contributing to this final product, this strategic plan. So I know that we had 2 board members as well that were part of the process, and if any board member would like to make any comments, we'll go ahead and give you that opportunity now.
Thank you, Raymond. I agree with everything that Raymond said, so I won't repeat all of that. But thank you to everyone who participated. I just want to call out that really appreciate that the process included being intentional about hearing the student voice. We talked to over 100 students, and that was the first feedback that the board received. And the feedback that the students gave was really thoughtful and intentional, and that really guided the board's thought process and decision-making process as we went through the strategic planning process. So I wanted to specifically call that out and thank all the students for their participation and their thoughts and feedback.
Thank you, Graciela. I echo what both Graciela and Raymond said. In addition, what I appreciated about the process was that there was a strong focus on equity, and that the learning that is provided, the learning environment for our students is one that is equitable and provides for the most effective and efficient manner for our students to learn and for them to become successful and to be the best that they can be. I was part of the core team, and at my table there was usually a student involved in that discussion, as well as members of our Spanish-speaking community. And I valued the input that they brought to those discussions. I think that this process, while it was 5.5 days, was worth the time. And I appreciate all of the commitment from the community and from staff to give up those days out of their personal schedules and be a part of this process. I think the strategic plan is stronger for that commitment. Thank you.
I'd just like to add, I was also part of the whole core team process, and the thing that's amazing about it is it's hard work sometimes to bring together 70 to 100 people in a room and have them go through a complete process. But what I was impressed by was that all the stakeholders were in the room, and what emerged out of the process, even though people bring all kinds of different experiences with education, and some good and some bad, and they bring all their own agendas to that process. What emerged was still, I think, some thoughts and ideas that everybody could agree on. And I think there's real power moving forward in having all those stakeholders involved.
That was the best 5.5 days I've ever spent with people from the community, the students, other stakeholders. I thank Kevin for being here from YSD 105. And just seeing how these young people, these young students were advocating when other folk was bringing up their agenda of how they think that they should learn and what they should get. And these students spoke up and advocated for themselves. This is and to see this final product is a blessing. And that was the best 5.5 days I ever spent. And I enjoyed watching how people who had a different mindset came into line with the decisions that were made. And that was the best 5.5 days I ever spent with strategic planning. I've done that with Matubu before in Seattle and Shoreline, several other places, but that was the best. Thank you.
All right. So you can kind of sense the excitement from the board as we move forward, and we definitely are going to implement this, and we look forward to doing that. We have exciting future for the board, but more importantly for our students and our community. So with that, we're going to go ahead. Thank you very much for all your input. And once again, thank you for being here today. And thank you for your contribution and collaborating with the Yakima School District. And again, we look forward to working together, right? And serving our kids and educating all the kids in the Yakima School District. So thank you very much.